combine X-rays and ultrasound. The kind of thing I guess you'd imagine would be developed in Sweden or in the United States. And our technology, which is now going through its second set of human trials, is probably the most advanced in the world. And if it comes through this level, there's an enormous opportunity for us to commercialize this. And that's a partnership between an entrepreneur based at the University of Cape Town and Groote Schuur Hospital and government. So we've made some of the seed funding available. And I think it's to take the innovation concept and to show how South Africa is beginning to play in this area and bring more opportunities. The question of the higher education challenges and crises has come up here. And I think they're enormous, and we've got to admit them and accept that there are some challenges that we're going to have to work through. We don't have all the answers. We've got some good programs in place. But I gave us a talk in December at a forum looking at 20 years of the Constitution. And so I brushed up and I tried to look at what was the state of university education at the time of the adoption of the Constitution in 1996. And DP, you'd be interested to know there were 385,000 students at university. So the head count at the university is 385,000. Today there's more than 900,000 young people enrolled at universities. So we had this enormous expansion in access. So we've got to deal with many of the challenges, and they're real and they're urgent. But if you look at the long trajectory of what we're doing, it is a very positive story there with the challenges. And that was what President Xi was saying, really, that globalization creates challenges, but you don't retreat. So in the same way as we expand university education, there are new funding challenges, new problems. Poorer and poorer children are being drawn into higher education, and with them they bring newer and newer problems. But better those problems than the problems of exclusion. Much as it may not sound that when many of them march, Max, but these are better problems to have than the problems that large numbers of young people just don't have any access to higher education. Finally, I want to just perhaps comment on the question by I didn't catch the name, but the reporter from the SABC. On the jobs issue, unquestionably, jobs remain the most urgent challenge that we face in the country. Millions and millions of people are without employment. But we should also, while we say we need to do a lot more and we need to do it a lot better, we also need to just look at what the facts are over the last couple of years, because you've got to start with the facts. And between 2010, October 2010, which marked for us in some way the beginning of the employment turnaround to today, the economy has created a net 2.1 million extra jobs. We have just short of 16 million South Africans working today. And I tried to plot, or get my staff to plot GDP growth and employment growth to see what is the relationship between that. And over this period, the employment coefficient was 1.4. In other words, Alec, for every 1% GDP growth, we've had on average a 1.4% growth in employment. That does not diminish the fact that we still have an enormous challenge. There are still many people to be brought into employment. But it clearly indicates one part of our story. And we've done some quite interesting work on the employment challenge, and we're now looking to capture it in programs, and we've launched some in the past, particularly on youth employment. That's going to be the most urgent challenge. So complementing the issue of higher education, which is access to skills for young people, is the other part, which is job opportunities and entrepreneurial opportunities for young people. So I think that is the story, in a sense, that we can communicate here in Davos. And at the same time, we know back home there's a lot more we need to do. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on...
Let me make you more dignified.
Oh, sorry. It's not a skiing accident. I had a surgery. Just to comment on two issues. I think, first of all, the point raised by Sim about the fourth industrial revolution, what it means for us and those issues. And then also a little bit on the question of the transformation question. I think that, and I'm on the board of stewards of the WEF on the fourth industrial revolution, and I sat there because I wanted to learn about the technologies that are coming in, what these disruptive technologies are going to mean, and what the ways we need to prepare ourselves for the introduction of those technologies are. And I think we need to be very clear that this is not just a manufacturing story. This is also a banking industry story. This is an accountants industry story. This is a lawyer's story. And these technologies are coming in more rapidly than I think that we have anticipated. And they are having some very, very profound effects and some impacts. And my day job takes me around many, many factories in South Africa, and I go and see what foreign investors are doing and bringing to our country. And there's a good news story, and there's also a bad news story. And I think this is like everything. We've got both. And the good news story is that when more robotic, more digitized production processes are being introduced, as they are, the good news is that we have young South Africans, women as well as men, that are at the head of these production lines, and that they are all actually winning awards in the company for productivity, competitiveness, and whatever. But the challenge, of course, is that all of them have got some kind of post-school education qualification, and often in some kind of engineering-related field. That doesn't necessarily mean a degree. It can very often mean a TVET qualification, but that's what they've got. So, people on production lines in factories are walking around in white coats and are pressing buttons. They're not doing manual work so much anymore. That's the reality. When I go around, someone will tell me the productivity we've introduced has taken the human factor out of quality control. And what that means, if you decode it, is they've taken out the people that are looking and taking out the defects with a machine that does that. That's the reality that we're going in for. And I think that the challenge we've got is that, well, first of all, we've got to make sure that we understand that jobs are going to be created for people, decent jobs are going to be created for people that have got some post-secondary education. That's why the access to higher education is a big issue, because that is the price of getting a job in South Africa. So I think these are enormously big and very profound issues. Now, the problem and the backlash that you're getting in that the WEF is trying to come to terms with, the populisms, I think they're different in different countries. In the developed world, you've had people in Rust Belt jobs that used to have intergenerational upward social mobility, used to live the American dream generation by generation, who are now finding that, and there's research that shows that the opposite is now the truth. And those people are now wanting to go back to the past. In our case, I think we've got young people who've never really had access to decent employment, whose aspiration is that, and are finding that they're trying to deal with this in this context. So, I think there's some very, very big and profound debates which I think are only beginning to start. And they're going to involve very big issues like the relationship between work and income. If, you go to work and you get a decent income, if you're not in work, you get a lousy income. I think there's beginning to be discussions about those. Things like basic income grants are coming back onto the social agenda. So I think we're going to have to confront those. The other one, of course, is that does everybody have to spend most of their life in work? Or should we be working shorter hours and having more people in work? I think these are going to be some very profound questions. And I think that as South Africans, we don't want to be at the receiving end of this. Let's start a discussion. Let's start to innovate. I think this is where something like the minimum wage comes in. And where does that go in the future as these new technologies come in? I think the other thing is that, we come to Davos. And I think that all of us, including Max Price just now, our glass has got some liquid in it. We spend this part of the year talking about the part that's got some liquid in it, and the rest of the year about the part that hasn't got any liquid in it. That's our narrative. That's our problem. And every country's like us. Every country's like us. Nigeria, East Africa. Are they different? Have they got knock-off problems? I think we need to confront our problems, but also have a stronger sense of our capacities and our abilities, and come up with more of these stories, more across the year, how we can build on the successes, how we can overcome the challenges. Because I also want to tell a story again. It's about, there's the new technology in pharmaceuticals is about biotechnology. And the latest developments in terms of cancer treatments are to move away from chemical treatments, chemotherapy, which basically attacks the good cells as well as the bad cells, and that's why you feel sick when you're doing it, and to have a much more directed biotechnology approach. And then there's even something called biosimilars, which is more effectively like generics, but of this sort. And there's a company that's going to invest in Durban. And it's going to go and establish this, the first project on the African continent. I walked around the parent company at Cipla in Goa during the BRICS. And I saw the people that are there are all masters or PhDs in biotechnology. So they had to come and look and see whether we had the people who were able to do this kind of work in South Africa. They're perfectly happy and perfectly content that we do, and they will be starting the construction phase of this factory, biosimilars, cheaper, more effective cancer treatment that's coming through in South Africa. So I think these things are happening all the time, and I think we just need to capture more of that. Around empowerment, I think that we do need a much more profound conversation about empowerment. You may have picked up that the amendments we made to the empowerment laws and so on, they were intended to try to broaden the impact of empowerment and to try to encourage many more people to be real players with real leadership in the economy, in the productive sectors of the economy. And that's the Black Industrialist Program. Now, I think one of the things I just want to say this is that we have now supported about 23, 24 on the Black Industrialist Program. It's quite difficult to get through that. We've gone for quality. And we will be going around and we'll be trying to showcase some of those people, because some of those people are really significant players in industrial space. We need many more people to be playing that role. We need to industrialize our economy. We need to do so as part of the African continent. Our problem in our place in the global division of labor is we're too much in primary production. We need to move up the value chain. We need to diversify. And even if we just industrialize, that's not even the best place, because innovation is the king of the roost. And that's where we need to go. And for that, we need a much stronger cadre of local manufacturers. We can't be expecting that foreign investors are going to come and do it, and that's going to be it. The intellectual property will be controlled by them. It will be held somewhere else. It'll assist in developing our productive capacity. We must go out and support them, but we need to develop many more players in the productive economy. And I think that that's where we need to make empowerment go. We need to make empowerment go much more in that direction. How do we move to get many more young entrepreneurs in various forms of complementary activity? We're going to have to make some choices, I think, on youth and internships and apprenticeships and stuff like that. Because I became aware our department has been supporting a program of internships. You've got a 2.5 times better chance of getting a job in South Africa if you've had a period of internship than if you just come out of a higher education institution. So getting internship going is quite critical. So I think that we're poised at a moment, actually, where, we come to something like this. I sit on the board as stewards of this because I want to know what's going on. Sometimes I think that maybe a little bit too, futuristic, but sometimes you see that these things are actually happening at the pace they suggest, and maybe even faster sometimes. And I think we need to be ahead of these conversations, and we need to be thinking strongly as a country. How do we develop an inclusive growth model that goes along with these changes, that's able to liberate our people from a lot of back-breaking work, that's able to raise living standards and productivity in our country, and at the same time deliver a shared future for all of us? That's essentially what the story's about. And I think that's what responsible leadership's about. Either we do it as a country or we get left behind. I think we've got an opportunity, and I think we need to work together around this. And I just hope that we don't have a sort of a Davos week where we speak like this and then we have 51 weeks when we speak something else. I think we need to have much more of an ongoing dialogue where we know that there are challenges. We speak frankly about the challenges, but we also recognize the strengths that we have as well as a country. Thank you.
We're going to take the last two questions, one contributions, one from Dennis George, and then and then one from Sipho, because he indicated to me earlier wants to speak. We take these two, then we...
It was an uppercut. Good afternoon. I just got a short contribution to make. My colleagues from Kusatu, from Fedusa and Naktu have asked me to come with Team South Africa. You know,
Fix your jacket, please.
thank you. This anointing is falling, you know. So the leadership asked me specifically just to be part of Team South Africa, as we did when we went to New York and Boston and to convince investors to South Africa is the right place. Secondly, we've also dealt with the rating agencies and we were quite successful. So what I want us to do now, Deputy President, is they've asked us to boost investor confidence, because investment is the key ingredient for inclusive growth. And they specifically had a telephone conference this morning with them. And this matter of boosting investor confidence is very critical to get our growth rates to what the NDP suggested at 5%. And so from our side, we are here to work together with business and to work with government, because it is quite important that we must get more of our people in employment. And we're looking specifically to unlock certain obstacles and the constraints that is there, that is things that we can control. The things that you cannot control, those things you must ask the pastors to pray. So from our side, Deputy President, we are very confident that we will succeed in that. And tomorrow, Labour will be part of the International Trade Union Confederation, where we will address the critical issue of the skills revolution that will support and prepare our people for the industrial revolution. Because when these revolutions come, you know, it's your soldiers and your workers and your people that must be productive and that must be energetic to embrace the challenges of the future. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, President, there are three issues for me which I think you commented about the negative narrative of the last year. But in that narrative, there are three positive things that I think we've been conveying. The first one is that our chosen system of governance, which is the constitutional democracy, has been tested and it has acquitted itself very well. The second thing is that, with the developments that have happened in higher education, our chosen system of dialogue as a way that enables us to navigate and find answers to our challenges has proven itself very well, in that not so long ago, the kind of challenges we faced in higher education would have resulted in bloodshed. And we haven't had that. We've had serious contestation, very provocative engagements, and it speaks to the resilience of our system that we've gotten to the other end of this without finding solutions, but we've not seen what was possible in our too distant future. The third and the most important one is that, as you indicated, our financial services environment is our flex. The South African established money markets are a very important platform for attracting investments. And I think the messaging in the contestations that we've had last year is that we guard that very jealously. Whatever our differences are in respect of that, we think that that's a platform that enables us to address most of the issues that we think are important in driving South African economy forward. And that's why I think Jabu is making reference to the importance that you attach to coming to a conclusion early on in finalizing the FICA amendment bill. So we hope we'll be able to achieve that. For me, those are three very important positive developments of last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Deputy President, you want to say a few words before we close this?
No, just to say, well, I think we can close because we're running late for other sessions, and just say thank you. This little booklet here outlines 16 reasons why South Africa matters. I once went to Qatar, and they had a coffee book that set out 1,000 reasons why Qatar matters. I started at some stage drafting many more reasons why South Africa matters. I got to 1,500 why South Africa matters. So we matter much more than the 16 that are set out here. And let's keep telling the world about why our country matters and why we should attract investments back home. Thank you very much.
Mr. Deputy President, thank you very much.
All right, well, there you have it. Members of government, business, finance and investment at Davos just making their representations to some of the media there on the opening day of Davos, and just hearing from Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa in his statement. We will take a short break. Do stay with us. More coming up just after this.